And then he looks right at the camera and slaps the glass and he goes, "Look, real glass, cry me a river." And I'm like, what the was that referencing? And everybody was like, "Oh my God, shots fired at Punk." And I'm like, what is he talking about there? And then I remembered, you guys reminded me of that story from a couple of weeks ago about Jungle Boy's desire, apparently, to use real glass in a pre-tape on Collision. And Punk apparently told him, "We don't do that here." And then even went on to speculate that Jungle Boy wanted to do that so he could take a vacation or he could get time off or something or whatever it was. And so this apparently pissed off Jungle Boy, and he gave CM Punk a public receipt on camera. And I was like, huh. So anyway, match continues. Jungle Boy loses. He taps out to the Red Rum in the middle of the ring. Hook is your new FTW champion. And that is the end of the 0 hour. Then the main card starts, and the first match we're going to get on the show is CM Punk versus Samoa Joe. So now All In has began. It's time for the first match. And as CM Punk is making his entrance, I see a tweet from Sean Ross Sapp that says, and I quote, "There was a physical confrontation between Jack and Punk before Punk came out." So that's all we knew, was that there was a physical confrontation right before CM Punk's opening match in front of 81,000 people against Samoa Joe. So my first instinct was, okay, Jungle Boy made that comment on camera. Punk is pissed, and Punk confronted him about it. And what I didn't like about it, and of course this was me assuming, because that's just what I think anybody would assume. Jungle Boy shot first on camera. You hear about a confrontation. You wouldn't think that Jungle Boy would be the aggressor. It would probably be the other way around. Punk showing up and saying, "Hey, what the fuck? What was that about?" And the two getting into an argument. It just seemed like logic that that's the way this would have gone down if a confrontation did in fact take place. And my issue with this was, okay, because I know how fans love to this "you started" stuff, because we're all five. I still hear people talking about how Hangman Page started. Hangman Page, who hasn't said a word in 14 months about any of this stuff, they're still like, "Well, he said workers' rights." And I'm like, that's long gone now. CM Punk is, went off on the scrum and the counterfeit bucks and then flipping out on Hangman Page and his action figure line on Collision 2 weeks ago when the show went off the air. If Jungle Boy went into business for himself there, tried to make CM Punk look bad or referenced some sort of internet story on camera, and Punk is mad about that, fine. Punk actually kind of has a right to be mad about that, I suppose. But you are in your gear. You are about to walk out there in front of 81,000 people in the company's biggest show ever. It's not like Punk was on later. It's not like Punk has already had his match. He was heading to the fucking ring, and he allows this to happen, or he confronts Jack Perry. And I posted on Twitter the clip of the old commercial, the old "don't use drugs" commercial with the kid, and the dad's showing him the pot or whatever. He's like, "Tell me, where did you learn how to do this?" And the kid goes, "I learned it from watching you." He just did what you taught him to do, is pretty much the way I saw that. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, Punk is going to confront Jack, but let's just give you a hypothetical here. Let's say Punk confronts Jack Perry. There's arguing. It gets physical. People jump in to break it apart. And in the melee, much like the same thing happened to Vince McMahon when Bret Hart punched him out, in the melee trying to pull everybody apart, somebody steps on CM Punk's ankle and breaks it. Breaks his ankle. He can't walk. His music's playing. What do you do? What do you do in that situation? Luckily, nothing like that happened, but it could have. And imagine that blow, your biggest show of all time, the biggest show you're ever going to do. And on the very first match, the first person to come out can't even make it out to the ring because he just got in a fight backstage with more of this elementary school bullshit. And that could have happened. And what would have happened had something like that gone down? What if it's a big risk to take? How would they have called that audible? What the hell would they have done? So I just think that's pretty ballsy and a pretty incredible risk to take for Punk to even want to get involved in something like that right before he's heading to the ring. It seems like a professional would say, if I punch this asshole, that's going to get leaked. People are going to find out about it, and it's going to distract from the show. It's going to distract from what we're trying to do here tonight. As a leader, It would be irresponsible to do that. So I'm going to confront the little prick after the show. It's that easy. But then we started hearing things that perhaps Jungle Boy was the aggressor, that Jungle Boy stepped to Punk, that Jungle Boy got in Punk's face. If that's the case, then Punk is absolutely in the right. You know, Jungle Boy was the one that not only said the shit on camera, but then he's going to walk backstage and get in his face too. You know, if Punk defended himself there, then Punk is in the right. We really don't know. Fightful Select does have a report on this that was updated, I believe, twice. Here's what Fightful Select had to say earlier on about this situation. And I quote, "Details are few and far between at the moment, but we have learned that Jack Perry and CM Punk had an altercation shortly before CM Punk went to the ring for his AEW All-In match. Jack Perry was on right before him and did a spot on a car window and said, 'It's real glass, cry me a river.' This was a shot at Punk, who had a confrontation at an AEW Collision taping this summer over Perry's insistence on using real glass for a spot on the show. We're told Perry wasn't happy with how the situation was relayed publicly by those close to Punk." So that's important there. It's not the fact that Perry was upset that Punk didn't want him to use glass. It was how the story got out and relayed to the sheets and stuff, and how it was perceived, I guess, is the way is what made him mad. This is the same type of shit that CM Punk got mad about too, right? Didn't we hear all that last year? He didn't like the Bucks and talking to the friends and the way they were trying to manipulate the internet reports about CM Punk. This feels like it's the exact same fucking thing here, just on the other side of it. The report goes on to say, "We have learned at least one side of the story, which claims that Jack Perry approached CM Punk backstage and stepped in his face and bumped Punk. Punk was said to have then pushed Perry. Perry allegedly came at Punk and got choked. We haven't heard of a particular kind of choke or who broke things up. So before you start whacking off to this, let's just make sure this is actually true first before you go too nuts here. Please note, this is only one side of the story, and more details will emerge." It goes on to say that Miro has claimed the story was, quote, "fake and untrue," and other versions allege that Punk threw a punch and that Punk stepped to Perry first. So again, there's conflicting reports. It goes on to say, "We've reached out to both CM Punk and Jack Perry for their sides to clear up a misconception regarding their prior argument. Perry trying to not come to work the next week. We're told he had a pre-planned and approved vacation." So this idea that he was trying to use real glass to get out of work, he had already had a pre-approved vacation, and the two were completely unrelated. And Fightful said that they will follow up here with any additional details as they learn them. From Punk's perspective, if the story is correct about Jack stepping to Punk, then, yeah, that's pretty messed up, especially if CM Punk's on his way out to the ring to open the show, have a match with Samoa Joe. He already had this kid taking a shot at him on the pre-show. Now you're going to cross paths with him backstage and he's going to step to you. You might have to whoop his ass. So Punk might be in the right if that's what happened. That's very important. Don't just decide which one's right because that's the side you want to be on. Just get the facts. That's all it is. You just have to get the facts. And in this case, if the story about Jack Perry stepping to Punk is true, Jack Perry got everything he deserved. He deserved to get choked out. He deserved to get beat up. He deserved to get sent out of the building. Fair enough. But if it's the other way around and Punk saw what Jungle Boy said and got pissed about that, you've got bigger fish to fry right now. You're about to open the show in a championship match against Samoa Joe, one of the biggest matches you're ever going to have in your career. You haven't been in a stadium show since WrestleMania 29 back in 2013 against The Undertaker. This is a huge deal for you. This is a huge deal for your company. So if Jungle Boy did not step to Punk and he was not the aggressor in this at all, and it was Punk that confronted him, why are you doing that when you are seconds away from your music playing? That's when all of this shit about Punk talking about, "I'm trying to run a business here." No, you're not. No, you're not. You are not trying to run a business here. Because if you were, you would know that doing that is extremely irresponsible, it's risky, and it's unprofessional. If you view something and believe something is unprofessional, don't handle it in an unprofessional way, because that's the whole argument. What Jungle Boy did going off script there, something that probably was not talked about or approved or discussed. He did it on his own. There might actually be consequences coming for that. Tony Khan might suspend him for doing that. I would. If he went completely off like that, especially during a time when, there's already a lot of tense relationships backstage anyway, don't fan the flames. Maybe it was Jungle Boy's frustration boiling over. A lot of people are frustrated with CM Punk and just the energy that he brings with him. But in this isolated incident, if you're just judging it in a vacuum, Jungle Boy was out of line to say what he said. And I think CM Punk was very much well within his rights to confront Jungle Boy about it, but it was the timing of it. If it does turn out, if we get the full story, we get multiple stories, and it becomes the belief that it was CM Punk that stepped to Perry first, that is extremely unprofessional of CM Punk. This was your chance to be the bigger person. This was your chance to let somebody else be the unprofessional one and let you conduct yourself professionally and fairly or like a man. Talk to him after the show. Even if you want to fight him after the show. But you shouldn't be trying to fight him when you are seconds away from going out there and having to deliver a match that 80,000 fans paid to see. And that's kind of where it gets murky for me. So in the opinion of Greg, it just depends on what the truth is. When all the facts come out, listen to us. It's like this is fucking soap opera shit. When all the facts come out, we find out who did what, who was the aggressor, who punched who first or pushed who first or whatever. Once we get that information from multiple sides and we start developing a real true story of what actually happened, then I think you just look at it logically. And the way I look at it is that if Jack Perry was the one that approached CM Punk after he did that, he deserved everything he got. But either way, regardless of who's in the wrong or who's in the right or whatever, the fact that there is just still so many bad feelings, the fact that Jungle Boy was in a match with Hook in front of a record-setting crowd, and what was on his mind was taking a shot at CM Punk. That's immature, and that's not what a professional does. And in that instance, Jungle Boy's wrong. But again, we're not dealing with a normal wrestler here. Punk is a very polarizing personality with a reputation. Any other situation like this, if Jungle Boy had some sort of argument with anybody else backstage and he pulled that little stunt on camera, I would immediately fault him for that. But the fact that it's CM Punk, it's part of you can kind of understand that Punk is divisive. And, they're even building 2 separate locker rooms. We might even be getting a 2 world championship deal here because that title actually was on the line tonight against Samoa Joe. It's embarrassing that these things are happening in the company. And they avoided disaster tonight. Like I said, because think about that scrum, what happened, the brawl after, everybody got suspended and it was a huge fucking disaster. And something like that could have happened here. If the fight got more physical, or if CM Punk, God forbid, would have gotten hurt accidentally, not meaning Jungle Boy would have hurt him, but just in a pull apart. Samoa Joe's 340 pounds. What if he steps on your ankle and snaps it in the pull apart? And now you got a broken ankle and your music's playing. What the hell do you do? They were lucky, because when you have stuff like this, that's how disasters happen. When you handle unprofessional situations unprofessionally and nobody is the adult and everybody is just, inmates running the asylum type of thing, that's when you can have disastrous outcomes. And they're lucky that nothing disastrous happened here. Punk, Jungle Boy, all you other fuckers backstage, get your shit together, man. Tony Khan, show some leadership. I'm begging you. I don't even dislike Tony Khan as a promoter at all. He's got some issues, but what promoter doesn't? I'm just happy that he's a fan that loves the business and wants to spend any amount of money to make his company great. That's a good foundation to have. You can work out all his other issues later. Maybe he's booking too much like a fan. Okay. Who do you want him to book like then? Books too. You want to book like Eric Bischoff? Russo? What booker out there? Think of all the wrestling bookers. Who has been perfect? Paul Heyman has never been perfect. And he's considered one of the best minds ever. Vince McMahon is a fucking lunatic. Triple H is pretty good, but even Triple H has his problems. So all these comments like, I don't know if Tony Khan's the right guy to run AEW. Well, then who the fuck is? And I know the Booker of the Year shit is meaningless. I don't pay any attention to that. But people do vote for that. He's won it a couple of times. So how bad can he really be? compared to everybody else. Does he have problems? Does he do shit that I wouldn't do? Do they have questionable booking decisions and questionable outcomes and issues with women's divisions and things like that? Of course. So did WCW, so did WWE, so did ECW, so does WWE right now, so did TNA. Everybody goes through this shit. So it's not really him from a booking or promoting perspective that I have an issue with. It's the fact that unlike Vince McMahon, when he was at the helm, people feared him, you know? He had that Darth Vader type of, vibe to where he was intimidating. And he commanded that respect. And he was that authority role where he wasn't afraid to tell you no. And those are things that Tony Khan does not have, and unfortunately, we only have had one Vince at the end of the day. So, they need somebody there, I think, that has a little bit more authority and isn't trying to please everybody. At the end of the day, at some point, the responsibility falls on the talent as well. It's time for them to step up and be professional. And I think maybe they could. I think it's the fact that it's CM Punk. Because like I said earlier, we've seen lots of these type of stories, with Punk, go shooting off on the mouth about this or being pissed at this person or social media posts or arguments backstage or sending people home or you can't be here, you can't eat in catering. We've seen a lot of different names involved, but at the end of the day, there's always one common denominator. And one name, even in the revolving names that we see, one name remains constant in every story. That's CM Punk. So at what point, do you acknowledge that too? You can't ignore that his presence there is causing issues. But what can you do? We will see. What a crazy situation. I don't even know what to make of it. Sounds like Jack Perry got his little ass whooped. It's good for him. Everybody needs to get their ass kicked sometimes, It's good for you. So CM Punk might have taken him down, might have choked him out. He might not have. We don't really know. We'll monitor the story. I'm sure we'll talk about it again this week. And who knows? These guys, if Jungle Boy was sent home, are they staying at the same hotel? Are they going to be at the airport? Clearly, a conversation needs to be had here. Clearly, somebody needs to get suspended or reprimanded. You cannot, if you're Tony Khan, just let this slide because that sets a terrible example. If you do that. So if Jungle Boy was in the wrong, he was sent home. And if it's confirmed that he not only started this, but also stepped to Punk right before Punk was about to step out in that aisleway in front of 80,000 people, it's grounds for release, if you ask me. Seriously. If that's that has to be true for that to happen. I'm just speculating. But if that's the story that we hear, and not only did Jack run off at the mouth on camera when it wasn't approved, but then got in CM Punk's face when he's trying to get to the ring, I'm sorry. You should be fired. You should. But I doubt that's what actually happened. If it is, sayonara, JB.